get the score right in front of me. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Brew with Matt and Mike. Wisconsin loses to BYU 98-70, and honestly, that final score looks probably a little bit nicer than the game really was. Not much, but 28 points. It was a rough game. A lot of things, I feel like a lot of things that could go wrong for Wisconsin went wrong. And Mike, I'll just start with you right away. Tell me, what did you learn in today's game from Wisconsin?
We learned that they have some things to get better at. They're going to be a growing basketball team. And, a couple things with them is, we had talked a little bit before we got on the show. The biggest difference between BYU and Wisconsin today is the level of competition each team has played so far in the season. I think one of the biggest takeaways from today is you can see that BYU just had a dogfight. A couple of days before, who did they play before? I'm drawing a blank on it.
They played UConn.
Yeah, they just had a dogfight with UConn that came all the way back. UConn's a high-level program. Dan Hurley's a nutcase and an absolute stud of a coach. Oh, he's a great coach, though. He gets the most out of his guys. Detailed. He's crazy, but he also produces winners. So, and that level of intensity carried over. They were already kind of geared up for a game against Wisconsin, against another high major opponent, against guys that they've seen similar length, similar size, similar speed. Wisconsin is not anything that BYU hasn't seen so far in this season, whereas it's the complete opposite for Wisconsin right now. They had not seen the length, they had not seen the size, they had not seen the physicality that they need to play with in terms of, and just the level of execution BYU, played today. They were able to execute at a very, very high level. They got shots that they wanted to. Their point guard, Wright, got into the paint. He was a maestro. He was, distributing. He was forcing action, putting pressure on the rim and spraying it out to shooters. So you could just tell, BYU had played in a higher intensity game and played at a higher level already this season, and Wisconsin was just getting their feet wet with this game. And that early part of that first part of the second half, you could see it with some nerves, as well as we talked about before. They played at elevation today, and if you've never played basketball at a high level at elevation, I'm going to be honest with you, you have no idea what it does to your legs or what it does to your brain. You are gassed. And so I saw that a little bit earlier in the game. Guys were kind of huffing and puffing. Their chests were pretty heavy early, and you could see their legs were getting taken out a little bit behind that. So you could see, BYU plays at elevation, and Wisconsin had to go to elevation. And I don't know how many days they spent before. It usually takes about 4 to 5 days to get really acclimated to that. So those two factors produced the score we got today.
Yeah, and a key point in the game that we talked about before this was when Wisconsin cut it down 56-49, 12:58 left in the game, and then they had a questionable call on a foul call where they fouled Keita, and he knocked down both free throws. Of course he did, but it was a rough 1 minute stretch right after that. Gard, you can tell Winter and Belowskis were really sucking wind, and so Gard went to get him out, tried sneaking him out for about a minute, and it got ugly for that minute. He did a whole line change. He took out Boyd. He took out Winter. He took out Belowskis. And next thing you know, it's 56-49. The guy made both free throws, 58-49. Then it was 60-49 going into the TV timeout. They had their guy at the free throw line. So 56-49 with 12:58 left. And then before you know it, it was 65-49 with 11:35 left. And 75-53 with 7:27 left. BYU, and it's just like in the game in March against Wisconsin, you can't get down. You can't let them throw the first punch. You can't get down big against them because you make a mistake, you shoot a bad shot, you turn the ball over. It seems like they make you pay every time. And Saunders, I'm super impressed with 26 in this game, 25 against Wisconsin in March, and that game in March was super frustrating as a Wisconsin fan. Wisconsin would do something really nice, and then BYU would just answer every single time. And Tanjay almost single-handedly willed Wisconsin back to that game. But, yeah, Wisconsin playing BYU in elevation, I've seen enough. No more. No mas. But, yeah, the other takeaway before we get into the next discussion point was just a lot of nervous energy. A lot of nervous energy. Mike was able to watch the game a little bit closer than I was. I was running all over the place. But the thing with, I was able to notice it right away that Wisconsin was nervous in that game. And BYU, like you said, they played high-level competition. They beat Villanova. They barely lost to UConn. They were comfortable, and it was kind of a home game. It was a home game for them, and they were super comfortable while Wisconsin came out super antsy. And yeah, Boyd picking up 2 fouls in the first half didn't help at all. But it was not even that far into the game, maybe 5 minutes into the game clock, and I was like, I don't like how this game feels. Forget what the score is. And then I will say that Carrington delayed the inevitable. He came in, he seemed confident, he seemed ready to go, hit 2 threes right away. I liked his energy, but he just delayed the inevitable. It felt like BYU was going to blow the doors open, and it felt like Wisconsin was kind of lucky to be within 12 at halftime.
Yeah, completely agree. And the nervous energy was a couple of things. There was not a crispness to their offense, right? We've seen in other games where they feel really crisp. Their decisions were very decisive, very confident in their decisions. And today, they run a lot of this European motion, and just the ability to reverse the basketball, right? We saw against SIUE, they tried to take that away. They tried to take that reversal away, and they had some success with it. And then BYU took that little piece of information from that game, and they started denying. They started taking away some of their motion aspects. And you could just see the ball was not popping like it usually does. There wasn't those quick reversals. And it shows in the stat sheet. There was 8 assists and 12 turnovers. And, I think Wisconsin had 19 or 20 in the previous game. So when you have single-digit assists for a team that's supposed to be scoring in the 90s, that's when defensively, BYU did a great job, as well as, Wisconsin just was unsure of themselves for a few minutes there. And when you're playing against a team like that, those few minutes, that's really what happened. They got down in that 12-point hole, and they couldn't get it below 7. And then all of a sudden they got back to 12, and they couldn't get back to 7. And then it went to 19, and then it just kind of ballooned on them. And games go like that a lot sometimes. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can tell BYU was, as I said, they were confident, they were cool, calm, collected. They were flowing out there, and when Wisconsin fell behind, you could just feel them pressing. They were not letting the game come to them. They were trying to get it all back in one possession. But yeah, you talked about this before the show, but a lot of one-pass shots. Wisconsin 8 assists to BYU's 18. The ball was just skipping around for BYU. But yeah, moving into the next discussion point I want to discuss is Nolan Winter. Topic on the show quite a bit. I've been quite bullish on him. But yeah, he had 14 points. He had a double-double tonight. He had 14 points. But the big thing for me, if he wants to take that next level as a potential first team or just an all Big Ten guy or a potential NBA player, he's got to start knocking down threes. He was 0 of 4 from 3 tonight. Now he's 3 of 16 on the season, which is 18.7%. And Wisconsin overall just shot the ball terribly. BYU shot it very well. BYU was in the 40s. Wisconsin was 7 of 29 for 24%. And Carrington made 2 garbage time threes to make that look just a little bit better. So what do you think about Nolan Winter and his pro prospects and him? What do you think his ceiling is?
Not much has changed for me. In terms of, he looked pretty comfortable. The one thing that I was a little bit disappointed with is early in the game, he got a catch on I believe it was the right block. And he had a smaller guy on him. And instead of just, taking his time a little bit more, he was a little bit more unsure of himself. He didn't take it with confidence, and he ended up losing his dribble instead of just backing him down, turning and shooting a right jump hook or getting into a quick spin or being more aggressive, right? Being more assertive. And he didn't do that. So I think, as we've kind of talked about it, he's got to still grow into that assertive role, because even though, there is lots of different jobs and there are lots of different roles at the NBA level, I think, for him looking at what he can and will do, he's a rim runner, he's a rebounder, he's a screen setter. And in terms of being a spacing big right now, he's got to work on his jumper. And it's not even some of it's his mechanics. My biggest thing with him is he is a 6'11", 7-footer, and his release is right around his head. And by the time he actually fully releases the ball, it's probably right around 8 feet. And he needs to get the ball in. When he shoots it, he shoots laser beams right now. We talked about it before. He got to get his hips underneath him a little bit more. Got to get a little bit more arc on his jump shot. If he starts doing that, he'll start knocking it down, I believe. But in terms of being a stretch big, that's one of the things that, was everybody was so high on him, right? Because he did shoot the ball from three pretty well last year. And that was where his versatility allowed him to start getting those NBA discussions. So for him, it's finding his jumper again, right? And sometimes it goes away. I've had that happen to me before in my career. When I was in college, it happened to me more often than not. It's happened to me as a professional as well. It's something that comes and goes, and hopefully he's able to, get in the gym, find some confidence in that jump shot, and continue his road towards, being an NBA player. Because physically, talent-wise, athletically, fluidity-wise, has it. It's just now it's a lot about mentality and some skills. And that's, for me, that's the biggest thing. So we'll see what happens with him this year. And you know what? He might come back strong. Something might switch in him, and he might find his jumper. A couple of them go down. He gets some easy stuff going. He finds some flow, and all of a sudden, his next 6 go down or his next 8 go down, and he has a couple games of 4 for 5. It's, that can also happen with guys, and especially younger guys. As you mature, finding confidence in your game is a little bit easier. But when you're much younger, I remember very specifically, I had some shooting slumps, and it was rough, man. Mentally, it's hard to get over that, right? Because your job is to make shots, and you got to do it at a high level. And people like me and you get to critique and sit in a nice, comfy chair while he's got to go and deal with the mentality of doing that in games. So, hopefully he does, but I still think he has a chance. It's not that he doesn't, because I've talked about it with you many times. He physically, like the intangible stuff that you cannot teach, he is in the same building as all those NBA guys. It's now just getting the skill set to be on the same floor as those guys.
Okay. Yeah, what do you think about Greg Gard and his performance in this game? One thing I didn't like, and I know you said Hayden Jones is your sleeper NBA pick for Wisconsin, but for me, it doesn't seem like he's ready for primetime right now. And he went in for a minute, turned the ball over. I don't like sneaking Hayden Jones in right now in big games. If you want to build him up, let him have some success. If they play some more mid-majors, let him have some success there. But I don't feel like he's ready to be put in big moments right now.
No, he's still a little bit raw. He's still a little bit – we also got to understand, he's from New Zealand. You look at it in terms of big changes in your life, right? And Hayden Jones is a kid. He's coming all the way thousands and thousands of miles away from all he knows. Everybody and everything is a little bit differently. New Zealand has their own culture, their own vibes, their own kind of certain sets of values, which aren't so foreign, in terms of, I would say Belauskas has a completely different set of ideas and everything coming from Lithuania. But, he's a young kid. He moved far away from home, and he's trying to figure some stuff out. And yes, he's played on world stages. Yes, he's played in World Cups. He's played in big games in international play. But he's also played in big games against guys that are mostly his own age, right? And physicality. And now all of a sudden he is seeing some guys that are a little bit older, that, are a little bit more polished, and the game just seems really fast for him. And that happens, it seems just a little bit fast for him. And he just he doesn't have that kind of FU mentality yet. He's got his little New Zealand, I'm still a kid, I'm not going to come and go after your throat kind of mentality. And you can also just see he's thinking, right? He's not playing, he's not flowing, he's thinking, he's trying not to make mistakes. He's trying to figure out this game right now. And that's what happens when you jump up levels. It happens at the professional level, it happens at the high school level when you go from JV to varsity. When this is the big thing, is when the lights get a little bit brighter and they get a little bit bigger, and all of a sudden the gyms get a little bit bigger and the lights in those gyms are even brighter. That's where the mentality, that's where the psychology of sports comes in. And that's where, guys can separate themselves, because he's 6'6", he's got skills, he's got the ability. Now it's just putting that mental and that confidence, right? That I can do this. I have that belief in me. And, he has to find a little monster inside of him that tells him constantly, I am the baddest dude on the planet, and I should be here. I belong on this floor.
And I'll also say it probably stinks that Kirk Penny's not there for him anymore, right? Like you commit and you think you got a fellow New Zealander with you who's going to be kind of guiding you in your career, who can relate to you. Not having Penny there, I imagine, isn't fun for him. And I know Wisconsin's got a senior in high school right now who's from New Zealand as well, who committed. So I forgot what his name is, but yeah, I respect that Wisconsin's still able to get him despite Penny not being there. So that's interesting to me. And then another thing that I heard the announcer say, kind of moving back to Winter, I forgot to say this, was the announcer said that he's 250 pounds, and there's no way I'm buying that. He does not look 250. Like they said, he came on campus, it was 200, and now he's 250. I don't even know. Like I'm guessing he looks bigger, but he doesn't look that much bigger than last year. How much do you think he's weighing right now? Like 235 would be my guess.
I would say, around 240. This is the thing that happens though, is he's a giant human. Like the amount of length he has on his body, so the way he carries 250 is going to be different than, let's say, myself. I'm 6'7", right? He's 6'11". So you add those 4 inches. I will say this. I think he can be close to 250. I just look at his overall thickness, especially in his midsection area around his stomach, a little bit lower below his chest, his back, his like hip area. He looks a little bit thicker there. And when you start to put on weight, and especially if you start to put on weight heavier there, that's really where you can start putting on some mass. And, for me, when I was at my heaviest, I actually looked fat when I was in college because I had a lot of I was mostly upper body weight, and for him, he doesn't have such big shoulders and big arms like that. He's still strong, except that they're not. But I see a lot of his weight in his midsection, which is actually a good thing moving forward, and for him longevity wise, I think that's actually great. So I would say he's closer to maybe 240, but I'm also I'm not in the weight room with him. I don't see what he weighs and scales and stuff like that. So.
Okay. And then I think the last question before we wrap this up, and I also want to point out, we talked about this off camera, but Nick Boyd, 0 assists, not ideal for your point guard to have 0 assists. And I also want to throw in, like, him getting 2 fouls in that first half was an absolute game changer for Wisconsin. That was massive. Like that was probably a charge, not a block. Him getting that second foul, absolute game changer for Wisconsin. They need him on the court. He might be the guy. I think I said it and then I backpedaled, but I might say it again. He might be the guy who Wisconsin can't afford to lose. They need that dribble penetration to just get things flowing.
Yeah, he's an engine, right? Like he's an engine. He's a guy who puts pressure on the paint, and he puts pressure all the way on the rim. And this is the other thing, like BYU did a great job of scouting. Like I've said this before, is you got 2 guys, your 2 lead guards actually both like to go left. John Blackwell does a great job on the right wing, rejecting the ball screen. He has a lethal shimmy where he has his left foot down as his pivot foot. Ball goes, he goes hip to hip rip, puts his right foot in the ground, and then blows by you with his left. And he tried to do that 3 or 4 different times. It's one of his best moves. BYU wasn't having any of it. They shut it off the whole game. Even when Dubanska, like they tried to go some ISO with him there and that. So, it's the same thing. Nick Boyd, he wasn't quite as prolific in the ball screen game because I thought, BYU did a good job in coverage and ball screens. And we need him to get downhill. And he needs to be, yes, a scorer. And you saw today, I think the reason why he didn't have as many assists is because he saw, like, man, we're down. Guys seem kind of shaky with the ball. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and try and get mine, which isn't necessarily wrong, but it also doesn't help the flow of the offense, which is why you end up with only 8 assists instead of, the 19 or 20 when it's moving like that. So we'll see. He's definitely the guy. And like you said, the major turning point in the game was when he picked up a second foul. Dubanska, that was definitely a charge. I'm not trying to be a homer. He put his shoulder in the middle of his chest, and he was still moving, but Dubanska lowered his shoulder, hit him in the middle of the chest. That is obviously an offensive foul. He got, that NBA star treatment the early part of the game, and that really changed things because even though the game was a little bit up and down, you were kind of seeing like, man, if they can just find something to flow off of, and Boyd was going to be the one that was kind of the difference maker. And just didn't happen. And, that happens in games. So it's, one call can change a lot of things. That's one of the interesting things about basketball is foul calls can really alter the way things move in a basketball game, whether it's for you or against you. One whistle can really make a big difference.
Yeah, it's a game of chain reactions. And I think the last question I'm going to ask, and then we'll wrap this up. How concerned are you after this game? And if there is anything you're concerned about, what would that be?
To be honest with you, I have almost zero concerns after a game like this. We talked about it earlier, playing at elevation, first real big test in an NBA arena with a whole bunch of NBA scouts around. For a team that has not been together for more than 6 months, 8 months, right? Normally you have teams that have been together for years, especially of upperclassmen. I think we learned some things. Braden Carrington, when the lights get bright, he shows up. That's great. When things are a little bit down, we seem to press a little bit, right? And these are all like teachable moments. So for me, it's more of, hey, they got to find their composure. They got to collect themselves. And how do you respond? For me, it's they play Providence next, correct?
Ooh, that's a good question. They might. I think so.
I believe they play Providence next. Another big, Power 5 school, good team. Competition level is up there, right? They're getting into these bigger, these holiday tournaments, and if they win that game, probably going to go play Florida, another potential Final Four team, right? And for me, I really hope they go ahead and take care of business. I hope they bounce back really well against Providence and get to go play Florida again, because I think it'll be a much different showing. I think they'll get their sea legs under them. I think they'll see what they need to do and how they need to care about every possession, the intensity they need to play with, and how to handle that intensity. And clearly they just didn't do a great job of it today. And, we'll know if this was a good learning point from them or if this is a backbreaker. For me, I don't think so. I think Coach Gard, that staff over there, they know that it's a game. Things happen, and they're gonna bounce back. I personally believe they're gonna bounce back. I think they're gonna go get some punishment and some payback back on Providence, and then really get another really good test against Florida. Hopefully, they take care of business well in that tournament, and I believe that's what's going to happen. I'm not overly concerned with this team. They're going to learn from this. This is an early game, that the first time they really got to play somebody.
And one more question I actually thought of. We didn't discuss Austin Rapp. He had a rough game today. Just give me your thoughts on his performance today.
He just looked a little bit out of sorts. Definitely, I think the elevation got to him too. And also that 3-point line, that NBA 3-point line got to him too. People talk about he has a lot of range, and he does. It's not that he does not, but his range comes when he's knocked a couple of shots down, and it doesn't come where he steps off the bus and he's in range. We also talked a little bit about some of the things that I see with him. He's a much better shooter when the ball comes inside out. When the ball touches the paint and he receives a pass that is coming directly to him from the basket, he's a elite shooter at that point. He gets his feet lined up. He gets his feet set. He does a great job. This game, he didn't have so many of those touches, right? As well as he shot quite a few on the reversal pass. So instead of coming from directly under the basket or a paint touch, it's coming from the top, either right or left. It's not that his mechanics are off. I believe it's his balance. He just doesn't have quite the same balance, and he's not quite as shot ready as he needs to be. And those are harder shots. Like as a shooter myself, as a guy who's played at the top of the key a lot, I always shot better from guys when I always had a higher percentage shooting balls from inside out. A couple reasons. You can see the basket when you're receiving the pass, as well as that's where you receive the ball a lot when you're shooting with a partner, right? So it's not you don't get as many practice shots passing from somebody from your side. I know they work on it in practice. They have rebounders and everything like that, but still does not matter. You get most of your reps. I would say 75 to 85% of your reps in your life come from somebody passing the ball underneath the basket. That's why guys shoot the ball so well that way. So, hopefully he can shake it off. It's another thing. He came from Portland, right? They played high majors. He hasn't quite gotten to that level yet. They played some high majors early, but then went back down in competition there. Now the lights are really, really bright. And, let's see if that carefree Australian vibe can push through, because I think he's a big part of this team. And if he just needs to still be confident in his game, even though, one of these days just didn't go well for him.
And I'll also throw in there, not only for Rapp, but other players as well. They want to show out in front of these NBA scouts. So I think that was some additional pressure that could have been impacting them a little bit. But that's all we got for you today, ladies and gentlemen. This was another episode of The Brew. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Let's go. Cool.